LEARN.BA, the skills you need to perform at your peak BA capacity.
So in the IT industry, there is a lot of marketing hype around Agile. Agile seems to be the buzzword of the day. And if you're somebody who's just getting into business analysis, likely you've gone to Google, you've tried to do some searching to try to figure out what skills you should learn, and you're going to be inundated with Agile training, Agile products for Agile methodology. Everything seems to be Agile. I'm going to tell you something in this video that you're unlikely to hear almost anywhere else. And that something is that you should spend very little of your time trying to learn Agile methodology. And the reason why I say that is that when you hit the ground and you start to find work and you start to get, actually start doing work for your clients or for your employer, you'll find that there are very few companies out there that actually use Agile. They may be Agile in name, but majority of companies out there run either purely waterfall projects or they run projects that are a Agile hybrid of a waterfall of the waterfall methodology. So if you listen to the industry hype, you're gonna spend an inordinate amount of your time and your resources learning something that you're not actually going to be using in reality. What you should do is learn enough Agile to be able to speak about it intelligently when you're in an interview, recognizing the fact that when you get into that company and you start working for them, it's very unlikely, regardless of what the employer what the employer claims or what the industry hype says, it's very unlikely that you're going to be in an Agile environment. The one exception to that is if you know that you want to work for a software company. So if you want to work, let's say, for a big software company like a Microsoft or a Google or even a lot of the smaller software companies, the likelihood of you doing Agile there is very high. Outside of that, those type of employers that are just purely software companies, the likelihood of you running into a pure Agile environment is close to zero. So learn only enough Agile to be able to speak about it intelligently. Learn the skills that you're actually going to need to use, which is either purely waterfall or a hybrid waterfall, some variant of hybrid waterfall. And I'll talk about that more if you know what I mean by hybrid, if you want to know what I mean when I say hybrid waterfall. But so let's get into the subject matter of this video, which is, number one, I want to talk to you about what Agile is and what Agile isn't, to help you clarify a lot of the confusion that exists out there about what Agile actually means, because it doesn't mean what you might think it means. Then I want to talk to you about the types of products where it makes sense for the Agile methodology to be used. And then number three, I want to talk about the cost of actually going Agile, because trying to switch from one methodology to another is not cheap. It is not certainly not free. It's not something you can just do on a whim. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of political will, and a lot of financial cost for companies to make the switch from a waterfall methodology or whatever methodology they're using now into going into one of the variants of Agile. So first point, what is Agile? Well, let me talk about what Agile is not. Many employers out there are sold on the idea that if they go Agile, they're going to be able to deliver the exact same scope of a product much more quickly. That is the incorrect definition of Agile. That's not what Agile was designed for. That's not what Agile does as a methodology. What Agile does is it gives you the ability, it gives your employer the ability to look up the entire scope of a project and then to divide it up in a way where it makes sense for them to release a certain portion of that entire scope much earlier in the process. So what you're doing basically, instead of delivering the entire thing at the end, you're dividing things up in a way where you're saying, what is it that we can deliver? What useful functionality can we deliver to our end customers or to the business earlier than we would if we had it in a waterfall project? And those two are very different things, but there's a huge misunderstanding of what Agile actually does. So Agile does not let you do the same amount of work faster. It lets you get a smaller portion of that solution out quickly so that you can build the rest as your clients are using that smaller portion. So in Agile, you have the concept of an MVP, for example, a minimum viable product. The MVP is that first release that your project is going to do, which is the bare minimum that they would need to actually have a useful product for them. And so the MVP changes from product to product. I'll talk about all that in a different video. But what kind of products does it make sense to use Agile on? First, the type of product you want to be, that your employer should be using Agile on are products that are, number one, they are products where the MVP is actually possible. It's not always possible to have an MVP for a solution that you're delivering. That's the first condition. And second condition is if you have a product that is going to be constantly evolving over time and that you don't necessarily know exactly what the end product looks like. So if you look at a company like Google, for example, Google has, let's say, any of their products, Gmail, right? They release a product called Gmail. When they released it a decade ago, they had no idea that it was going to be looking the way that it does. Because what they've had to do is they had to release their minimum viable product, and then they have to constantly refine it given the competitive pressures that exist, given what their customers are saying, and a lot of other factors that they've had to take into account. Gmail is now evolved over the last decade to become what it is that you see today, right? Most software companies are under that kind of competitive pressure, and that's why you see a lot more Agile in software companies, because software companies a lot of times don't really know what the end product looks like. They'll say, let's get the bare minimum out there, and then let's just understand the market conditions that we're under, and let's evolve our product to make it work. Under those circumstances, you would not survive, they would not survive if they tried to use a waterfall methodology. They would not have any chance of surviving in a competitive pressure. Most companies that hire business analysts are not software companies. Most companies that are out there are either like insurance companies, finance companies, a whole host of any other company out there outside of software is where you're most likely to end up as a business analyst, right? And those companies certainly do not use pure Agile. I can almost guarantee you that there are a very, very minute number of companies out there that are not software companies but do pure Agile. Okay, so don't invest too much of your time and effort learning Agile, just learn to speak about it intelligently. The type of products it does make sense for companies to do Agile are internal products. So most companies you work for are going to be building products, building software for their own internal use, for their to do operation improvement internally. And for those types of projects, what you want to do is ideally you have a good idea of what the final solution is going to look like. And so you can do, it makes sense for the company to spend less overhead. Agile has a lot of overhead. Spend less overhead on a waterfall project and deliver it, right? Or to do somewhat of a hybrid, not have a full Agile team structure, but try to release something out to the customer and then try to refine it, but not investing in a full Agile methodology. It's like a somewhat of a hybrid Agile. That's what most companies out there try to use. The overhead is the third part I wanted to talk about. Agile projects take way more time and effort to deliver than waterfall projects do. The overall scope of the solution would take way more time and effort to do in an Agile project because of the complexity involved. And I talk about this in lesson 0.3 of the BA Blocks program about why that actually is. But there's a lot more complexity, a lot of moving parts in Agile projects that just simply do not exist in waterfall projects. And managing all that complexity is not cheap. It is not certainly not free. And so all of the extra overhead that goes into running Agile projects, trying to figure out how to get your team trained well enough to be functioning as a well-oiled Agile machine, that overhead is not worth taking on if the competitive pressures aren't there for the product that you're building, right? So remember, Agile, there's a lot of buzz around it. You do not need to learn pure Agile. Don't invest too much of your time and your effort and your money into learning Agile if you're just getting into business analysis. Learn the basic principles and then try to learn what you need for the environment that you actually end up in. So I'll end the video there, but there's a lot more that I can say about this subject. If you're just getting into business analysis and you're interested, I'm gonna direct you to our website at LEARN.BA. We have a number of different lessons there where you can learn some of the basic concepts and principles, and that would be a good place for you to start. But if you have any questions about Agile, leave them below and I'll try to get to them as soon as I can.